Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Maeve.
Anthony, do you prefer Maven or Ant?
And of course, Maeve.
How is your Ant build.xml file? Let me guess, about 10,000 lines and out of control?
No. We've been following best practices and that has not happened.
Would you agree that Ant is misusing XML? XML was not designed for control flow and logic. Ever notice how something as easy as an if statement can be messy in Ant scripts?
At least, in Ant I can fully control the control flow and logic of my build tasks. How's your Maven default life cycle with 20 phases that nobody knows?
Anthony, the developer does not need to know every single nitty-gritty thing that is happening in the build. At least there is a default life cycle. You Ant people have no concept of convention. Everyone does things differently until it eventually becomes unmaintainable.
Well, there's best practices. And at least you can easily debug in Ant. That's not easy in Maven, Maeve.
Anthony, you shouldn't have to debug build scripts. Do you debug your operating system and your database server regularly as well? The very fact a developer has to spend time debugging build scripts shows something is not right with Ant. How do you handle dependencies?
I put them on the class path.
And when they change?
I change the class path.
You say dependencies are just a matter of putting jars on the class path. What if you have multiple class paths? For example, one for compiling and one for testing?
I define multiple class paths. I even follow a best practice by calling one compiled class path and the other test class path. Heck, sometimes I use file sets and reuse them across targets. It's no problem, Maeve.
So Anthony, do you enjoy if you are using something like Hibernate, which is a lot of jars and you have to put every single Hibernate jar on the class path?
It does not bother me. Again, you could use a file set to co-locate them and then put the file set on your class path. It's no big deal, Maeve.
But Anthony, when Hibernate upgrades, you need to upgrade. You need to download a new bunch of jars and make sure you never accidentally have a clash with other versions of Hibernate jars on your class path. You must admit that it is nice the way Maven abstracts dependencies into artifacts which are at a higher level than jars. It means there is less to manage and less chance of human error mixing up jars.
Okay, I agree. But it requires the library you are using to be publishing the Maven way, Maeve.
They all are now.
Okay, so you saved yourself some typing and you don't have to worry about individual jars. Hibernate may as well have one jar instead of 20. I acknowledge that. However, if I want to be 100% sure what is going into my class loader using Maven, I have to turn on verbose class loading. This is because Maven pulls jars from multiple places and can make these decisions dynamically. And will only access the parts of my file system I tell it to without any special configuration. I don't need to teach it manners.
Oh Anthony, don't be such a worry bag. What about transitive dependencies? Hibernate has dependencies to other jars. That means you waste even more time making sure you have those other jars. Maven will get them for you. You don't have to worry about transitive dependencies. And where do you store all the jars your project uses? Probably in with your source code. With Maven the jars are stored separately so you have a clean separation of concerns.
Some good points. And you must accept that Ivy provides some extra features such as what you have described to Ant. May I say to you, I like the way in Ant it is easy to compile package by package and thus enforce package dependency rules. This means it is easier to enforce good design and avoid circular dependencies between packages. If I wanted to do that in Maven, I would have to write a POM for every package, which is very cumbersome, Maeve.
But Anthony, you don't have to write a POM, you can generate it from an archetype. Then you can use a master POM which references all sub-POMs. It's very easy, you know.
I'm sorry. That means I have more things happening that I don't have easy fine-grained control over. I can't even echo to my console what I want where I want it during my build with Maven.
Anthony, are you a control freak?
I like to know exactly what is going on with my file system. Sometimes using Maven you end up having to use a tool like FileMan and check file timestamps just to be sure what's happening to your file system. This gets even worse if you are using something like Eclipse, which has its own file structure for web projects and requires the M2E plugin to map the way Maven wants files to the way Eclipse wants the files. What about if I want to just write a simple task to move a file from one place to another? This is easy in Ant. In Maven, I have to see what plugins will do this.
Yes, Google Maven plugins and you will see there are quite a lot. Even for copying a file, Anthony.
Yes, even for copying a file. I know. Tell me about it, Maeve. There are many plugins that can do it. So much for convention. For a simple task like copying a file, Maven projects will all do it their own little way. Furthermore, using Ant it's easy for me to control exactly when this file will be copied. In Maven, I have to check plugin goals. Then I have to check what lifecycle phase they run in. Remember, it's the Maven lifecycle phase, not mine, and it's hassle for me to change this.
Are you a control freak? I think you're a control freak. And remember, you can change when the copying happens by binding to the goal to a different lifecycle phase.
Yeah, one of Maven's lifecycle phases, not mine.
Yeah, and remember, you are a control freak.
My head is beginning to hurt.
That's because you are a loser.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.